We met every night in the same elevator. No names, no promises, just looks we pretended didn't mean anything. Until one night, neither of us could pretend anymore. It started the way routines always do, quietly, like a habit you don't remember choosing. The elevator in Larkspur Tower had a mirrored wall that made you look more awake than you felt. It also had a personality. It groaned on the way up, paused too long on floors nobody pressed, and smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and expensive perfume. Mara Keene always stepped in at 7:12 p.m., always. The first time, I'd thought, okay, she's just another late worker. The second time, I'd clocked the watch, the posture, the calm. The third time, it became a question. And by the 10th time, it felt like the building itself was setting a stage. Tonight, I slid in just before the doors shut. My badge swung against my blazer, betraying the sprint I refused to admit to. I smoothed my hair like the elevator might tattle. Mara was already there. Dark coat draped over one arm, blouse crisp, sleeves rolled to the forearm like she'd negotiated with her own day and won. She didn't glance down at her phone. She didn't fidget. She simply stood like the air was her ally. Her eyes found me in the mirror first, then in real life. "You're cutting it close," she said. "Me?" I pressed my palm to my chest, scandalized. "I'm punctual. The elevator is dramatic." A slow curve touched her mouth, almost a smile, but controlled, like she didn't give those away for free. "Dramatic," she repeated, as if tasting the word. The doors sealed. The ascent began. We rode in that familiar pocket of silence, the kind that wasn't awkward so much as charged, like the pause before lightning decides where to land. "It's almost a routine now," I said, because my brain had apparently stopped protecting me from my own mouth. "True," Mara replied. "It almost feels planned." My heart did an annoying little flip, like it had been waiting for that exact sentence. I kept my gaze forward. "Any plans after work today?" Her eyes flicked to mine. "Depends if an interesting invitation appears." There it was, that subtle dare, the way she said interesting, like she was labeling me and watching to see if I'd accept the name. I inhaled once, like courage could be oxygen. "So," I said, "I'm going to invite you for coffee after work today. Do you accept?" Mara didn't answer right away. She tilted her head, studying me the way someone studies a painting they've seen before, but finally decided to understand. Then she nodded, small, decisive. "Now I have the interesting invitation I was waiting for," she said. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. We stepped out like nothing happened, like my entire chest wasn't suddenly too small for my heart. "See you downstairs," she added, and walked away with the kind of confidence that didn't ask permission from the world. I stood there for half a second too long, watching her go, trying to pretend I wasn't already counting the hours until the end of the day. The problem with anticipation is that it makes normal time feel like an insult. I tried to work. I did, technically. I answered emails, signed off on a vendor contract, and corrected a spreadsheet that had been wrong for 3 days, because nobody had the nerve to tell our CFO she'd mislabeled columns. But my mind kept slipping away, tugged by the gravity of one thought. Coffee. Mara. Not in the elevator. I had seen Mara around the building, of course. Larkspur Tower was full of high-functioning adults who wore their stress like jewelry. But Mara stood out, partly because she was beautiful, in an effortless, sharp-edged way, and partly because she moved like she had places to be that mattered. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying. She simply existed like she belonged at the center of every room she entered, which made it deeply inconvenient that I wanted her attention the way thirsty people want water. At 8:46 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from my assistant, Danny. "Danny, you're still here?" Me. "Yes, I'm wrapping up." Danny. "Wrapping up what? Your life? Go home." Me. "Bosses don't..." Go home. We haunt buildings. Danny, you haunt buildings with expensive hair. Be safe. I smiled despite myself, then stared at my inbox like it had personally wronged me. The building was thinning out now. Footsteps echoed longer. Lights clicked off in distant offices, and the air got cooler, like the tower was exhaling. By 9:12, I'd shut down my laptop, slid it into my bag, and stood. My heels made a decisive sound on the floor. Confidence I was borrowing, not owning. I took the long route to the elevators. Not because I was nervous. Definitely not. Just because I wanted time to settle my face into something calm and normal. When I rounded the corner, Mara was already there. Of course she was. She leaned against the wall near the elevator bank, coat now on, hair pulled into a low knot that made her cheekbones look like they'd been designed by a sculptor with an agenda. She looked up when she heard me. "You made it," she said. "I'm the definition of reliability," I replied. "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation." Mara's gaze swept over me. Brief, professional, then not. Her eyes caught on my mouth for a fraction of a second, and it was so subtle I could have imagined it, except my body responded like it was real. The elevator arrived with a sigh. We stepped in, the doors closed, and the air changed. It was ridiculous. The same elevator, same mirrored wall, same lemon-clean smell. But with the building nearly empty and the hour late, it felt like the tower had given us privacy, on purpose. "Believe me," I said, because silence was suddenly too intimate. "If you weren't here, I'd be completely lost." Mara's eyebrows lifted. "No way. You're more than essential here." "Essential," I echoed, amused. "That's a big word." "You are," she said simply, like it wasn't flattery, just fact. I swallowed. "I think it's time for our coffee." "Finally," Mara murmured. "I really need one." The elevator began to descend. Halfway down, she glanced toward the panel, then back at me. "Is it just me?" she said, voice lower. "Or are we the last two people in the building?" I let out a soft laugh. "Honestly, I prefer it this way." Mara studied me. "Can I ask why you prefer it this way?" My pulse thumped at my throat. I could have answered with something light, something safe. Instead, the truth rose up, stubborn and hungry. "Because," I said, "I can't pretend about what I feel anymore." Mara's expression didn't crack, but her hand, resting at her side, shifted slightly, like her body had leaned forward before her mind could stop it. The elevator slowed. Ding. The doors opened to the lobby, empty and polished and too quiet. We stepped out together, walking toward the front doors, where the city waited like a living thing. Mara's voice was calm, but her eyes were not. "You planned all this," she said. "Didn't you?" My breath caught. The coffee was just an excuse. Outside, the city wrapped around us in night noise. Distant traffic, a siren far away, the hush of wind skimming glass and stone. Larkspur Tower stood behind us like a tall, nosy chaperone pretending not to listen. Across the street, a cafe glowed with warm light and mercifully late hours. The kind of place that served espresso like it was a religion. I could still feel Mara's question pulsing between us. "You planned all this." It wasn't accusatory. It was curious, like she wanted the answer to be yes. I adjusted the strap of my bag. "If I say no, will you be disappointed?" Mara's mouth quirked. "Depends on whether you're lying." I held her gaze. "Fine. I didn't plan the elevator, but I did notice the pattern." She looked toward the cafe, then back. "And what did you do with that noticing?" "I debated pretending I didn't," I said, "for an embarrassing amount of time." Mara's eyes softened. "Barely. And then I got tired of being the kind of woman who waits for life to happen to her." That landed. I saw it in the way her posture shifted, how her shoulders eased, as if she'd been holding tension in place with sheer will. "Good," she said. I don't like passive people. Neither do I replied. And that was true enough to make my chest ache. We crossed the street together, the light changing at the last second, like it wanted to test us. Mara didn't rush. She simply walked with the quiet certainty that the world would make room. Inside the cafe, the air smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. A barista wiped down the counter with the dazed expression of someone who'd been awake too long. A couple sat in the far corner, murmuring over a shared pastry, like they were guarding a secret. Mara and I approached the counter. "What do you want?" I asked her, because it felt like the first real question I was allowed to ask. Mara glanced at the menu, then at me. "Surprise me." "Dangerous," I said. She leaned in slightly. "I have faith in your taste." My hands suddenly forgot how to be hands. I ordered 2 drinks. One a dark roast with a splash of cream, one an espresso with something sweet, because Mara looked like she lived on sharpness and stubbornness and deserved softness anyway. We took a small table by the window. For a second, we sat in that new awkwardness, not the elevator kind, the kind that happens when 2 people remove the walls they've been hiding behind. Mara was the first to break it. "I've been waiting for you to do that," she said. I blinked. "Invite you?" "Admit," she corrected, eyes steady. "That you feel it too." I tried to laugh it off. It came out thin. "I'm not exactly subtle." Mara's gaze traveled over my face, like she was reading it. "You're subtle, just not where it matters." My throat went dry. "Where does it matter?" Mara's fingers tapped once on the table, then still. "In the elevator, you stand 2 inches closer than you need to." I froze. Then, because I'm me, I lifted my chin. 2 inches isn't a crime. "No," Mara said, voice quiet, "but it's a confession." My pulse stumbled. I forced myself to meet her eyes. "If I'm confessing, what are you doing?" Mara's smile faded into something more honest. Holding myself back, I stared at her. "Why?" She looked out the window for a moment, like the answer was written on the street. When she looked back, her expression was composed, but her eyes were unguarded. "Because you're not the only strong woman in that elevator," she said. "And I'm not in the habit of losing control." That made heat crawl up my neck. I took a sip of my coffee, just to give my mouth something to do, besides betray me. "So this is you," I said. "Being controlled?" Mara's eyes flicked to my mouth again, and this time it wasn't a maybe. "This," she said, "is me trying very hard to be." We talked like we were negotiating territory. Not in an aggressive way. More like 2 women used to being competent, used to being the ones who handle things, suddenly facing a situation where handling wasn't the point. Mara told me she ran risk analysis for a private equity firm on the 29th floor. I told her I was operations director for a design consultancy on 23. We compared late-night deadlines, like battle scars. "You always look calm," I said, tracing the rim of my cup with my finger, "even when you're clearly still working." Mara's laugh was soft. "I'm not calm. I'm controlled." "That sounds exhausting." "It can be," she admitted. Then, after a pause, "But it keeps me safe." The word safe landed like a weight. I leaned back slightly. "From what?" Mara didn't flinch, but her gaze sharpened, like she'd noticed a crack in her own armor and didn't like it. "From wanting," she said. My breath caught. I tried to keep my voice light, but it came out rougher than intended. "And what do you want?" Mara held my eyes, unblinking. "You already know." The cafe noise felt suddenly far away, like everything else in the world had politely stepped back. A barista called out an order. The couple in the corner laughed. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop. Inside our small bubble, Mara's gaze stayed locked on mine. I swallowed. "You said you don't like passive people." "I don't," she confirmed. "So, what happens?" I asked. When two women who don't wait meet in an elevator every night and pretend it doesn't mean anything. Mara's mouth lifted again, but it wasn't playful. It was sharp. Then eventually, one of them tells the truth. And if the truth is inconvenient, I pressed. Mara's eyes softened again, there and gone. Then we decide whether we're the kind of women who run from inconvenience. I stared at her for a long second. You're dangerous, I said. Mara's smile turned slow. So are you. The words shouldn't have been intimate, but they were, because I could feel it. The tension between us wasn't about flirting. It was about power, not over each other. Power over ourselves, the fight between wanting and restraint. I shifted forward slightly. Okay, I said. Truth then. Mara didn't move, but her attention tightened, like a wire pulled taut. I'm listening. I noticed the routine, I said, and I let it become something I could look forward to, because my life is full. I have work, friends, plans. I'm fine. Mara's expression didn't change. But, I continued, every time you walk into that elevator, it's like the air gets louder, and I've been telling myself it's nothing, because nothing is safer. Mara's eyes didn't leave mine. And, I exhaled, and I'm tired of safe. Mara's hand moved then, slow, deliberate, resting on the table, palm down, fingers relaxed, not reaching for me, not touching, just present. It felt like an invitation and a warning at the same time. I'm tired of safe too, she said quietly. My heart thudded. Then why, I whispered, are we still sitting 3 feet apart? Mara's gaze dropped to my mouth again, and her voice lowered. Because, she said, if I move closer, I don't know if I'll stop. I felt the answer in my bones. Then don't, I said. For the first time, Mara's composure cracked, not into chaos, but into something raw, something hungry and controlled at the same time. She stood, slowly, like she didn't trust her balance. Come with me, she said. Not a plea, not a command, a decision. We didn't go to either of our apartments. That felt too intimate too fast, like skipping pages in a story we'd been writing slowly for weeks. Instead, Mara led me back across the street and into Larkspur Tower through a side entrance that required a key fob and the kind of confidence that made security cameras look away out of respect. I didn't know this door existed, I murmured as we stepped into the dim hallway. Mara glanced over her shoulder. People don't notice what they don't need. That sounded like a life lesson, I said. It is, she replied, and kept walking. My heels clicked behind her, a steady rhythm that matched my pulse. We passed the sleeping lobby, the darkened reception desk, the polished marble that reflected our silhouettes. 2 women moving, like they had a purpose. Mara didn't touch me. Not once. That restraint was almost worse than touching would have been. At the elevator bank, she pressed the button. The doors opened with their familiar sigh. We stepped in. The doors closed. And it was like the world narrowed down to metal walls and reflected faces. Mara didn't press a floor. The elevator waited, obedient and silent. I turned to her. Are we going up or down? Mara's gaze flicked to my lips, then returned to my eyes. Neither, she said. Not yet. Heat curled low in my stomach. I forced myself not to fidget, not to break eye contact like a coward. You brought me back here, I said, to the scene of the crime. Mara's mouth twitched. It's not a crime. It might be, I said lightly, then added more honestly. If we let it be. Mara stepped closer. Not 2 inches, all of them. I felt her presence like a physical thing. Warmth, perfume, the faintest hint of coffee on her breath. You said you're tired of safe, Mara murmured. I am. And you told me not to stop. My throat tightened. I did. Mara's gaze held mine like she was anchoring herself. I don't chase people, she said softly. I don't lose myself. I'm not asking you to, I whispered. Mara's breath hitched. Just once, like her control stumbled and caught itself. Then what are you asking? She asked. I lifted my chin. To be here, with me, without pretending. Mara's eyes darkened. In the mirror, we looked composed, like two capable women discussing quarterly projections. But the truth lived in the space between our bodies, in the way Mara's hands hovered at her sides, controlled not because she didn't want to touch, but because she wanted to, too much. I've thought about this, she admitted, voice low. About you. My heart slammed. In the elevator, I teased weakly. Mara's mouth curved, but it wasn't playful. Everywhere. I swallowed hard. What did you think? Mara leaned in slightly. So close, her words brushed my mouth like a secret. I thought, she said, that you would taste like risk. My breath caught, sharp. And, I managed. Mara's eyes flicked to my lips again. And I thought I'd like it. For a moment, neither of us moved. The elevator hummed softly, patient. Then, Mara lifted her hand, slow, deliberate, and brushed the back of her knuckles along my jaw. Barely a touch. A test. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull back. I leaned in. Mara's eyes closed, like she'd reached the end of a long argument with herself. And when she kissed me, it wasn't frantic. It was controlled in the way a storm is controlled. Powerful, inevitable, precise. Her other hand found my waist, steadying, claiming space without taking me away from myself. I kissed her back like I'd been waiting in that elevator my whole life. When we broke apart, my breath came uneven. Mara's forehead rested briefly against mine. This is going to complicate things, she murmured. I smiled, dizzy. Good. Mara's laugh was soft, genuine. Then, finally, she pressed a floor. 29. The doors opened to a dark hallway, lined with glass offices and silent conference rooms. The air up here was cooler, quieter, like the building kept secrets better above the 20th floor. Mara led me down the corridor with her key fob, unlocking a door that clicked softly behind us. Her office wasn't what I expected. No clutter, no personal photos, no live, laugh, love nonsense. Just sharp lines, clean surfaces, a wall of books that weren't decorative, and a city view that made you feel like you were standing above the world's noise. Mara shrugged off her coat, draping it neatly over a chair, like even fabric needed discipline around her. She turned to face me. In the dim light, she looked different, not softer, just more exposed, like the elevator had stripped away the last layer of performance. I set my bag down by the door. So, I said, trying to sound normal and failing, you bring all your dates to the office? Mara's gaze sharpened. This isn't a date. The bluntness made my stomach drop. Then she continued, stepping closer. This is me finally stopping. Oh, my lungs remembered how to work again. Good, I whispered. Mara's eyes held mine, and I saw it, yearning, controlled but real. Not the fragile kind, the dangerous kind that lives inside capable people. I don't do messy, she said quietly. I'm not messy, I replied. I'm intentional. Mara's mouth curved. That's what I like about you. The words hit me harder than the kiss had. You like things about me, I said. Mara's gaze flicked over my face with slow precision. I've been liking things about you for weeks. My pulse stuttered. Name one, I challenged, because I couldn't help myself. Mara's expression didn't change, but her voice lowered. You don't shrink. I went still. Mara stepped closer. Most people shrink around me. They want my approval, or they want to beat me, or they want to prove something. And I don't? I asked, voice quiet. Mara's eyes darkened. No, you meet me. Something in my chest cracked open at that. I swallowed. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Mara's smile turned faintly wicked. That too. She kissed me again, slower this time, deeper. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, fingers firm, and I felt how carefully she held herself back, how much power she had, and how deliberately she chose not to use it to overwhelm. I pressed my hands to her waist, then her shoulders, grounding myself. We broke apart, breathing harder now. Mara's forehead touched mine again, briefly, like she couldn't help the tenderness leaking through. "You're trembling," she murmured. I scoffed softly. "No, I'm not." Mara's thumb brushed my jaw. "You are." I hated that she was right. I hated that I didn't hate it. "I'm not scared," I admitted. "I'm overwhelmed." Mara's gaze softened. "By me. By this," I corrected. "By how long I've wanted it." Mara's breath caught again, one small betrayal of control. She pulled back just enough to look at me fully. "Tell me," she said. I blinked. "Tell you what?" "What you want," Mara said, voice steady but low. Right now, my mouth went dry. I could feel the weight of her attention, like a spotlight. I didn't look away. "I want," I said carefully, "to know this isn't just a late-night impulse." Mara's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, assessment. "And if it's not?" she asked. "Then I want," I whispered, "to stop meeting you only in the elevator." Mara's gaze held mine for a long moment. Then she nodded, once. "It's not an impulse," she said. "It's been a restraint." That answer slid through me like heat. Mara stepped back toward her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small bottle of water, offering it to me like she was taking care without making a fuss. I took it, fingers brushing hers. Electric. Mara's jaw tightened at the contact, like even that small touch cost her something. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the couch near the window. I sat, not because I was told, but because I needed to breathe. Mara stood by the glass, city lights behind her, like a crown she didn't ask for. "I don't usually do this," she said quietly. "I don't either," I admitted. Mara turned, eyes catching mine. "Then maybe," she said. "We do it anyway." We talked for a long time. Not about work, not about safe topics, about the things that live underneath competence, the parts you hide because they don't fit neatly into resumes and polished conversations. Mara told me she'd learned control early. That chaos had been a language in her childhood home, and she'd decided young she would never speak it again. I told her I'd learned independence the hard way. How to be fine, even when I didn't feel fine. How to be the one who handles everything, because relying on people was a gamble. We didn't dramatize it. We didn't pity ourselves. We simply laid the truth out like cards on a table. And the strange thing was, it didn't weaken either of us. It made us clearer. At some point, Mara sat beside me on the couch. Not too close, not yet. Her knee angled toward mine. A subtle signal. I stared out at the city. "So what happens now?" Mara's voice was calm. "We don't pretend it didn't happen." "And if we regret it?" I asked. Mara looked at me. "Do you?" I met her eyes. "No." Mara's mouth curved, small. "Neither do I." The quiet stretched. Then Mara's hand moved, slowly, deliberately, resting on the cushion between us, palm up, an offering. My chest tightened. I stared at her hand like it was a doorway. Mara didn't rush me. She simply waited, eyes steady, letting me choose. I placed my hand in hers. Her fingers closed around mine. Not tight, not possessive, just sheer. In that small contact, I felt everything she'd been holding back. Mara exhaled, like she'd been underwater. "Dangerous," I murmured. Mara's thumb brushed my knuckles. "Worth it." I leaned closer, not because she pulled, because I wanted to. Mara's free hand slid to my waist, anchoring me, and she kissed me with a quiet intensity that made my thoughts scatter like birds. When she pulled back, her eyes searched my face, checking, measuring, respecting. "You're still okay?" she asked. The tenderness in her voice startled me more than anything. I nodded. "I'm more than okay." Mara's gaze darkened. Want, permission, control, all braided together. Tell me to stop, she said softly. I swallowed. I won't. Mara's jaw tightened, like that cost her effort. Then she kissed me again, deeper, and I felt the careful precision of her restraint dissolving into something more honest. She guided me back against the couch, not forcing, just leading. Her weight hovered, never crushing, always giving me space to push back, to match her. Strong women don't want to be handled like dolls. Mara understood that instinctively. My hand slid into her hair, loosening the knot, letting dark strands fall. Mara made a sound, quiet, involuntary, that went straight through me. You like control, I murmured against her mouth. Mara's lips brushed mine. I like choice. That word lit me up. I shifted, reversing the angle, pressing her back against the couch instead. Mara's eyes widened slightly. Surprised, then pleased. There you are, she whispered. I smiled, breathless. You said you like people who don't shrink. Mara's gaze held mine, hungry and amused. I wasn't expecting you to grow teeth. I've always had them, I said. You just finally got close enough to notice. Mara laughed, soft, real, and pulled me in again. Outside the window, the city kept moving, indifferent. Inside the office, 2 women. Stop pretending. Near midnight, we were both standing again, breathing slower, hair imperfect, lips swollen in a way that felt like a secret and a victory. Mara straightened her blouse with the same meticulous care she applied to everything, except her eyes were different now, less guarded, more alive. I watched her, leaning against the desk, arms crossed. You're really going to file this away under controlled, aren't you? Mara's mouth curved. Maybe. I lifted an eyebrow. That was the least controlled thing I've seen in months. Mara's gaze slid over me, unapologetic. Don't get cocky. I'm always cocky, I said. Mara stepped closer, stopping within inches. I noticed. The air between us hummed. I exhaled. So, are we going to do the thing where we pretend this was just chemistry? Mara's expression sharpened. Do you want to pretend? No, I said immediately. Neither do I, Mara replied. Then, after a beat, but we also don't rush. That surprised me. I studied her face. You're suggesting patience? Mara's eyes narrowed. Don't mock me, I smiled softly. I'm not. I'm impressed. Mara's gaze held mine. I want this to be real, she said, voice lower. Not just late-night heat and adrenaline. My chest tightened. You think I'm only here for late-night heat? I asked, teasing to cover the vulnerability. Mara's hand slid to my waist, fingers firm. I think you're here because you're brave. I swallowed. That's a dangerous compliment. Mara's thumb brushed my side. It's true. Silence fell again, but it wasn't awkward. It was loaded. 2 people standing at the edge of something new, deciding how to step without falling. Finally, Mara spoke. Tomorrow, I blinked. Tomorrow? Mara nodded once. We meet again. Not in the elevator. My pulse jumped. Where then? Mara's mouth curved, controlled, but pleased. Dinner, a real one, somewhere public. You're taking me out, I said, delighted. Mara's eyes flicked to my mouth. I'm not taking you out. You can leave any time you want. That's not what I meant, I murmured. I know, Mara said softly. But I need you to know it too. That, more than anything, made me want her. Not because she was powerful, because she was careful with power. I nodded. Okay, dinner. Mara's gaze softened. Good. I reached for my bag. Then I should go before I start thinking this couch has a lease. Mara's hand caught mine. Gentle, firm. Wait, she said. I turned back. Mara stepped closer, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Brief, intimate, unexpectedly sweet. I'm glad you invited me, she murmured. My throat tightened. I'm glad you said yes. Mara's eyes held mine, and for a moment, The hunger returned, sharp, undeniable. Then she stepped back, giving me space like she was proving a point. I walked to the door, heart thudding, mind spinning. As I reached for the handle, Mara's voice stopped me. "And Ivy." I paused, looking back. Mara's eyes were dark in the low light. "Next time," she said, "don't make the coffee the excuse." My breath caught. I smiled slowly. "Then what's the excuse?" Mara's mouth curved. "Dangerous." Satisfied. "We don't need one," she said. I stepped out, the door clicking softly behind me, and the hallway felt too quiet for the way my pulse was roaring. The elevator doors waited at the end of the corridor, mirrored and innocent. I walked toward them, knowing, with certainty, that the routine was over, and the real thing was about to begin. The elevator ride down felt longer than physics allowed. My reflection stared back at me like I was a stranger, lip gloss smudged, hair loosened, eyes too bright. I pressed the lobby button and forced my breathing into something that resembled normal. The doors opened to a sleeping lobby. Marble, glass, the faint hum of security monitors. A guard I didn't recognize looked up from his phone, nodded once, and went back to scrolling like nothing in the world could possibly be happening at midnight in a corporate tower. I walked out into the cold, and the city hit me. Wind, traffic, the metallic scent of winter. My car waited in the garage, obedient. My phone buzzed twice before I even got the door unlocked. "Mara, you got down okay?" A beat later, "Mara, and don't lie. I'll know." I laughed under my breath, the sound fogging the air in front of me. My fingers hovered over the screen. I could play it cool. I could be composed. I could be the woman who never shows too much. Instead, I told the truth. Me. "I'm fine. I'm also not fine." Me. "You ruined elevators for me." The reply came fast, like she'd been waiting with her phone in her hand. "Mara." "Good. Mara. They were boring." My pulse kicked again, traitorously thrilled. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and let the heater blast my cheeks back into civilization. At a red light, my phone buzzed once more. "Mara. Dinner tomorrow, 7:30, Mara. I'll text you the address. Mara. Wear something that makes you feel dangerous." I stared at the last line until the light turned green. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Dangerous. My apartment was only 15 minutes away, but the entire drive felt like I was moving through a world that had subtly tilted, like gravity had changed direction. When I got inside, I kicked off my shoes and stood in the entryway, staring at the quiet. The stillness pressed in, unfamiliar after the intensity of Mara's office. Her hands, her restraint, her eyes asking and answering without words. I should have been tired. I should have been thinking about tomorrow's meetings. Instead, I opened my closet and stared at my clothes like they'd betrayed me by being too practical. "Wear something that makes you feel dangerous," repeated out loud. My phone buzzed again, and my heart did that stupid, hopeful thing. "Mara. Also, Mara, I didn't kiss you because it was convenient. Mara, I kissed you because I wanted to for a long time." I stared at the message, chest tight, mouth gone dry. Strong, capable women don't usually get undone by text bubbles. Tonight, apparently, we did. I typed slowly. Me. Tomorrow, don't just want, me. Show up. A pause. Then, Mara. I always show up, Ivy. Mara. That's the problem. I set my phone down like it was hot. Then I stood there in my quiet apartment, heart pounding, and realized something that made me smile into the empty room. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing for disappointment. I was bracing for impact. Sleep was a rumor. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, while the city hummed outside my windows. My mind, replaying details with forensic intensity. The weight of Mara's hand at my waist. The way she'd said my name like it carried context, not just sound. Strong women don't fall easily. We tilt, We negotiate. We keep exits mapped. At some point near dawn, I stopped pretending rest was happening and rolled out of bed. Coffee first, armor second. Morning light turned everything honest. My apartment looked like a place someone lived alone by choice, not because she hadn't been invited elsewhere. Clean counters, art on the walls that meant something. A life that worked, that mattered to me. I didn't want to be rescued. I wanted to be met. By noon, Mara had sent the address. An understated restaurant tucked between a bookstore and a florist. The kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. I looked it up anyway. Old habit. It had a reputation for discretion and excellent wine. Of course it did. All day, I felt, watched. Not by people, by possibility. Every email carried less weight. Every meeting felt slightly performative, like I was playing a role I'd mastered while something more interesting waited off stage. At 6:45, I stood in front of my mirror and made a decision. Not about clothes, about intent. I chose a black dress that fit without apologizing. Clean lines, bare shoulders, heels I could walk in, not wobble. My hair stayed loose. My makeup was minimal. Sharp eyes, honest mouth. Dangerous didn't mean flashy. It meant deliberate. The restaurant glowed softly when I arrived. Candlelight, low conversation, the muted confidence of a place that expected you to behave like an adult. I checked my watch. 7:28. Right on time. Ivy. Mara's voice came from behind me, calm and steady as ever. I turned. She wore a dark suit, not severe, but tailored with intent. No tie. White blouse open just enough to suggest she knew exactly what she was doing. Her hair was down tonight, falling in controlled waves over her shoulders, like she'd decided to loosen one rule and keep the rest. Her eyes swept over me, slow and unhidden. Dangerous, she said quietly. I felt heat bloom under my skin. You clean up well yourself. Mara's mouth curved. I didn't dress for the room. No, I agreed. You dressed for me. She didn't deny it. Dinner unfolded with an ease that surprised me. Not electric small talk, not interviews disguised as flirtation. Real conversation. Stories that didn't feel rehearsed. Opinions exchanged without sparring. We disagreed on art, agreed on travel, shared an appreciation for silence that wasn't awkward. At one point, Mara reached across the table and touched my wrist. Not possessive, just grounding. You're quieter tonight, she observed. I'm listening, I said. There's a difference. Her thumb brushed my skin once. A private punctuation mark. I like that you notice the difference. By dessert, the tension had changed shape. Less sharp, more dense, like gravity pulling steadily instead of lightning threatening to strike. Outside, the night had cooled. We stood on the sidewalk, neither of us rushing to leave. This is the part, I said, where one of us pretends it's late. Mara met my gaze. Is it? No. Then don't pretend. I exhaled. Come over. It wasn't a question. Mara's eyes darkened. Not with surprise, but recognition. I was hoping you'd say that, she said, because I didn't want to be the one who asked. I smiled. Control issues? Mara stepped closer, her voice low. Choice issues. I unlocked my car, heart steady now, and knew with a certainty that settled deep. The elevator was only the beginning. The drive to my place was quiet, in the way that meant everything had already been said. And more was waiting. Mara followed me in her car. Headlights, a steady presence in my rearview mirror. Not chasing, not lagging, matching pace. It struck me how fitting that felt. Inside my apartment, the lights came on soft and warm. I kicked off my heels and turned to her, suddenly aware of the threshold moment. Inviting someone into your space was different from inviting them into your night. Mara paused just inside the door, taking it in without comment. Respectful, observant. You live like someone who expects to stay, she said. I blinked. Is that unusual? For me, she admitted. I'm good at temporary. I nodded slowly. Then this might be new for both of us. She met my eyes. That's not a warning. It's a fact. Mara stepped closer, close enough that I could feel her warmth. But she didn't touch me. Control, still. Choice. I meant what I said, she murmured. About not rushing. I smiled faintly. I didn't invite you here to rush. Her gaze sharpened. What did you invite me here for? I considered it. To see how we are without mirrors, without elevators, without excuses. Mara exhaled. Something like relief passing through her. Then we're aligned. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first. Conversation circling. Deeper waters. Values. Boundaries. The quiet costs of ambition. At some point, her knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. When she finally kissed me again, it was slower than before. Not testing. Choosing. After, we lay tangled but awake. City lights striping the ceiling. This is where it gets complicated, Mara said quietly. I turned toward her. Because it matters now? Yes. I smiled into the dark. Good. Complication arrived the next morning, wearing a familiar face. The elevator doors slid open on the 23rd floor, and Mara stepped in beside me, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Same hour, same space, different gravity. We didn't touch, we didn't speak. In the mirror, our eyes met, steady, calm, unreadable to anyone else. To me, it felt like standing on a fault line. On the 26th floor, the CFO stepped in. Conversation turned banal. Numbers, deadlines, the weather. Mara and I shifted into professional versions of ourselves with terrifying ease. That was when I understood the risk. At lunch, a message lit up my phone. Mara, we need to talk. Not tonight. Soon. My chest tightened. Not fear exactly, but recognition. This wasn't about doubt. It was about consequence. We met after work in a small park 2 blocks from the building. No hiding places. No walls. Mara didn't waste time. This doesn't stay contained, she said. We both know that. I nodded. You're thinking about work. I'm thinking about power, she corrected. About perception. About how quickly people decide a woman's competence has an asterisk. I folded my arms. You think I haven't already calculated that? Mara searched my face. Then tell me what you're willing to risk. I held her gaze. Tell me what you are. She inhaled. Control. Reputation. Distance. And if you keep those? I asked. Mara's voice went quiet. Then I lose you. Silence fell between us. Heavy, but honest. I won't be a secret, I said. Not because I need visibility. Because I won't shrink. Mara nodded slowly. I wouldn't ask you to. Then what are we doing? I asked. She met my eyes. Something fierce and clear there. Choosing. Carefully. Publicly. When it matters. I let out a breath. That's not easy. Mara's mouth curved. Nothing worth keeping is. The test came sooner than either of us wanted. A week later, an industry mixer filled the top floor of Larkspur Tower. Glass walls, catered confidence, too many people pretending they weren't watching each other. Mara and I arrived separately. We worked the room separately. We did not pretend we didn't know each other. When someone introduced us, Mara smiled and said, Ivy and I have been seeing each other. No qualifiers, no jokes, no apology. The room didn't explode. No one fainted. A few eyebrows lifted. Someone smiled. Too knowingly. I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. Later, alone, by the window, I touched her hand. That was the moment, I said. Mara nodded. I know. Do you regret it? She shook her head. I regret waiting. The city stretched below us, alive and indifferent. The elevator hummed somewhere far beneath. Weeks later, riding it together, we stood side by side without tension, without pretending. The mirrors reflected 2 women grounded, not circling. Mara glanced at me. It used to feel like a question. I smiled. Now, she said, it feels like an answer. The doors opened. We stepped out, not as a routine, not as a secret, as a choice. Choice doesn't end a story. It changes the rules. After the mixer, things didn't explode. But they didn't stay neutral, either. The building shifted. Conversations paused half a beat longer. Eyes tracked us with curiosity, sharpened by expectation. Not scandal, assessment. Mara noticed before I did. They're recalibrating, she said one night as we walked out together, hands brushing, but not entwined. People don't like adjusting their mental math. I don't mind being counted correctly, I replied. Mara smiled at that. That's why this works. Still, pressure has a way of finding seams. A senior partner pulled Mara aside one afternoon, voice lowered, concern dressed up as mentorship. I heard about it later, when she told me, without drama, without defensiveness. He warned me about optics, she said. And? I asked. And I told him my performance doesn't change based on who I have dinner with. I studied her face. You're sure? Mara met my gaze. I'm certain. That certainty mattered. Not because I needed reassurance, but because I needed parity. I wasn't being carried. I wasn't being shielded. We were standing shoulder to shoulder, absorbing the same wind. At my firm, the response was quieter. A colleague raised an eyebrow. Another asked if I was still focused. I smiled and said, more than ever. Which was true. What surprised me wasn't the resistance. It was how quickly it faded, once nothing fell apart, once deadlines were met, once deals closed, once the world realized two women choosing each other didn't slow the machinery. It refined it, and in the spaces between work, we learned each other slowly, intentionally. Mara cooked like she negotiated, precise, methodical, quietly proud when something landed right. I teased her about measuring spices. She teased me about improvising. You trust instinct too much, she said once. And you trust structure too much, I countered. She considered that. That's probably why we're not bored. The elevator became something else entirely. Not a charged corridor, not a testing ground, just a passage. Some mornings we rode together in silence, shoulders brushing, coffee warming our hands. Other days, we debated articles or shared half-formed thoughts we didn't have time to finish. Once, when the elevator stalled briefly between floors, I felt Mara's hand slip into mine, reflexive, grounding, not hidden, not dramatic. I squeezed back. Later that night, curled together on my couch, I said, "Do you miss the tension?" Mara tilted her head. "Sometimes." "Really?" She smiled faintly. "It sharpened things." "And now?" Mara's thumb traced slow circles on my arm. "Now it deepens them." That answer stayed with me. Weeks passed, then months. Not in a montage, just in lived time. Arguments that resolved without scorekeeping. Apologies that didn't bruise pride. Desire that didn't replace respect or get replaced by it. One evening, standing in the elevator alone, I realized I hadn't checked the time. The routine was gone. That night, I told Mara. She listened, thoughtful. "Does that bother you?" "No," I said. "It means I'm not waiting anymore." Her gaze softened. "Neither am I." The real test came quietly. An offer landed on Mara's desk. Significant, prestigious, and inconvenient. A role that required relocation. Not immediately, not mandatory, but tempting in the way ambition always is. She told me the same night, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "I haven't answered," she said. "I wanted to talk first." I nodded. No panic, just attention. "What do you want?" Mara didn't answer right away. She looked at me, really looked, like she was measuring something internal. "I want," she said carefully, "to choose, without defaulting to control." My chest tightened. And what does that mean? It means I don't want to decide out of fear of losing momentum or losing you. I reached across the table, covering her hand. Then don't decide yet. Mara's eyes searched mine. You're not asking me to stay? I shook my head. I'm asking you to choose honestly. I'll do the same. Silence settled, not heavy, not tense, just real. Days passed. Then one night, riding the elevator together after a long day, Mara spoke. I turned it down, she said. I stopped breathing for half a second. Because of me? Mara shook her head. Because I realized something. I waited. I don't want a life that keeps pulling me away from the place I've already arrived. The elevator doors opened. I smiled, heart steady. That sounds like clarity. Mara met my gaze. It is. Months later, we hosted a small gathering. Friends, colleagues, lives intersecting naturally. Laughter filled my apartment. Someone opened a bottle of wine. Someone else argued about music. At one point, I caught Mara watching the room, quiet and thoughtful. What are you thinking? I asked, sliding an arm around her waist. She leaned into me. That this is what I was controlling against. I raised an eyebrow. Joy. Attachment, she corrected. Then, softer. Belonging. I pressed a kiss to her temple. You're allowed to have it. She smiled. I know. Later, after everyone left and the city settled into its nighttime hush, we stood in the elevator together one last time that day. Mirrors, reflecting us, not as strangers, not as tension, but as continuity. Mara glanced at me. Funny. What? I used to think this was where everything might happen. I smiled, pressing the button. Turns out it was just where we noticed. The doors opened. We stepped out together, unhurried, unhidden, not as a routine, not as a risk, but as two women who met in an elevator and chose, every day after, to keep rising together. The end. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more lesbian love stories and slow burn romance. And tell me in the comments, would you have taken the elevator ride?